In today's video, I'm gonna talk about 3 different kinds of buckets that I've used, their price points, and if they're actually worth what I paid for them. Let's get into it. Okay, we're gonna jump right in. We're gonna talk about pricing right off the bat to get that out of the way. We have our tried and true Home Depot big box store bucket for about $5. You might be able to get it on sale for around $4, but we're just gonna talk about full price retail. Over here is your Adams 3.5 gallon bucket, $12. And the bucket that we see always online on our favorite detailer channels, a lot of them use the Yeti bucket. And that's my primary bucket. So why would you choose a $5, $12, or $40 bucket? What's the purpose and why should you do it? I think everybody's totally fine when you're just starting out in detailing, or if you're just a weekend warrior, or you just clean your car once a month. The $5 bucket is totally suffice. It works, it holds water, it does what it's supposed to do. Now, there are times where you don't need all the water that a 5 gallon bucket would hold. So that's why I chose to buy this 3.5 gallon from Adams. Now, I thought I would use it more often than I would. It did work for a really long time in my washing process. However, I did downgrade it to my wheel bucket. Now over here is the bucket I use all the time now. It's my Yeti bucket. And I'm gonna go into the reasons why I use this as my primary bucket now versus where I started and where I've been, right? So in the 5 gallon bucket from Home Depot, it does what it's supposed to do. However, you're gonna be careful, or you're gonna be mindful of which grit guard will fit in this. So your standard grit guard is something like this. You can get these pretty much anywhere. They're not that expensive. I think this is around $5. And like Chemical Guy sells them. They're all different brands. It's a pretty basic grit guard. You know, it keeps all of your mitts or your washing medium on top of the bottom of the water. However, it doesn't do as good as a job as other grit guards, which I'll show you in a moment. Now, I know this grit guard will fit right at the bottom of this Home Depot bucket, $5 Home Depot bucket. Fits perfect, it works, not a problem. However, when I go into my more current grit guards, and I like this for another reason, I'm gonna actually do a whole nother video just on this grit guard and why you might or might not want this. This one actually does not fit in the big box store bucket. You almost have to force it down, and I don't want to force it that much, and it doesn't go to the bottom. I'm not sure if you can tell from this angle, but it does not go all the way to the bottom like that more generic red one. So for a while, I moved over to this 3.5 gallon bucket because I wasn't always needing or wanting to fill up a 5 gallon bucket. Yes, I could have just not filled it all the way up. However, this one I think is nicer because it holds less water when I don't need all that water. And when I put it on my utility cart, it's still at a nice level, whereas a 5 gallon bucket it's not as high as a 5 gallon bucket while it's on my utility cart. And it will fit this style of grit guard all the way to the bottom, so which is great. And we'll go into the $40 bucket over here. The Yeti $40 bucket, there are a lot of good reasons to have this. Once you start getting, if you really want to call it more serious, or if you really want to call it just being obsessed about, you know, the construction of a bucket. So because there is a significant difference between a $5 and a $40 Yeti bucket, right? So let's just take this out of the equation for the moment. So they both hold more or less the same volume, 5 gallons, right? What you're going to notice are the problems of this bucket that this bucket solves. The Yeti bucket will solve problems that this one has just because of what it is, and it's only $5, right? So let me just move these grit guards. We don't need these here right now. So when you're using an inexpensive 5 gallon bucket, it slides very, very easily. You know, if you're even on regular solid concrete or in your driveway that might be covered in asphalt, it will slide, even though with a few pounds of water in here, it's gonna move, which is kind of good and bad, right? So if you kind of kick your buckets down the driveway, that's great. But if you accidentally hit it, it slides, it could hit the car, right? Which is what we don't want. And what the Yeti bucket solves on that one is that it has this rubber ring on the bottom. And that's gonna keep it from moving, right? Once you add that weight of water, it's very hard to move. Okay, so that's one thing. The next thing is this. This is probably the most important reason why you choose a Yeti bucket over a $5 Home Depot bucket, is the handle. Now, the handle clearly is just a piece of galvanized metal. I'm not sure really what it is. And this little itty bitty, I guess, roller to make it a little bit more comfortable to hold. And number one, it's not comfortable to hold once you add gallons of water to this. The biggest issue is if you're using a rolling trolley, bucket trolley on your buckets, which I'd show in a totally different video, and I'm gonna talk about those as well in detail, is this. This is exposed. This is just out there. So if you accidentally knock this into your car, or if it's on a trolley and it accidentally rolls over, this could potentially hit the bottom of the car by the door sill, a wheel, and this metal is just not going to be forgiving. It's just not, compared to what I'll talk about on the Yeti. So this is the primary reason I no longer use this bucket. It's now just for household stuff. Now on the Yeti bucket, you'll notice that you have nylon webbing. Everything is plastic or some sort of rubberized material. So while this pivot point or knuckle is exposed, if you were to accidentally run into your wheel or the side of the car, it is highly less likely to do any significant damage compared to a piece of metal, right? So this piece of metal is going to do way more damage than this piece of plastic or nylon webbing. And by the way, this nylon webbing is very thick. It just feels quality. And by the way, this is not sponsored by Yeti, but if Yeti wants to sponsor me, I am all ears. I did buy this with all my products by myself with my own money. And on the webbing, you have the carry handle. The carry handle is thicker, wider, and there's just more to grip. If you can see that, there's just more to grip on this. Okay, now, the other part of these buckets is when they're full of water, and let's presume you don't have a bucket trolley, you're gonna wanna pick it up. On this bucket, yes, you can pick it up by the handle. You can try to hold it like this and stick your fingertips into this groove to pick it up. The problem is there's just not a lot of groove. I don't think it's really meant to be comfortable in any way to pick up the bucket, and water gets heavy fast, right? Whereas on the Yeti, the water will get heavy just as fast as this one. The bucket itself, the Yeti bucket in itself, is heavier than this $5 bucket. However, you have this extra wide lip that your fingers can easily tuck into right here, and it's easier to pick up from the ground, or if you want to help tip it over, you can tip it over a little bit easier instead of coming from up here. And then even up here, if you go to grab this bucket versus the Yeti bucket, the $5 Home Depot bucket, there's almost nothing, there's no lip to grab onto right here. The Yeti bucket does, the lip does pump out or bump out, and it gives you something to grab and hold, even with your thumbs, the way it's flared out this way. Okay, so there's a lot of good reasons to spend $40 on a Yeti bucket versus $5 on a big box store bucket, if that makes sense. There's just a lot more opportunity on a $5 bucket for damage and overall comfort when you're using it, you use your experience. On the $40 Yeti bucket, The user experience is much nicer. You don't have to buy white. They come in a myriad of colors. I'll link it below in the comments for all these buckets so you can take a look at them. Again, these are not affiliate links. Just take a look on your own. If you want to buy one, buy one. I get nothing out of it. I just happen to like the way the Yeti bucket looks. I like the function and form of the plastic and nylon. Nothing is likely to scratch your paint if any accidents happen. Way more touch points to pick it up or move it safely. And all the grit guards that I've used thus far always fit very easy into this bucket. Now, yes, it's a $40 bucket. That's a lot of money. However, it's kind of like car insurance or any insurance that you buy, right? You have it, you spend the money on it, and you hope you never have to need that insurance policy to fix something that could have been avoided, right? So I see this $40 bucket as insurance for things less likely to happen in terms of an accident. Now, because I'm only using this one bucket, and I'm using, let's get rid of this because this has been relegated to the basement of my home, I am still using the Adams 3.5 gallon bucket. I use this because I like the size. It's good for doing wheels. I do put on a trolley, but I am very mindful when I use it during wheels because number one, I don't need all that water. I don't need 5 gallons of water to do wheels. And it sits on top of my utility cart when I'm doing interiors as my interior brush rinse bucket so I can rinse off the bristles of the tools I'm using to do interiors. So this works great. So I use this Adams Polishes 3.5 gallon bucket for exclusively tires and or interiors. I actually have 2 of these. So one bucket is for wheels and tires. The other bucket is for interiors. And the reason why I have 2 of these is because the 2 bucket wash method, I'll talk about that in another video. I have a whole another thought process on 2 bucket washing methods. So I'm using this Yeti every single time I'm washing a vehicle exterior for all the reasons. It's sturdy, it doesn't slide, it has great touch points to pick up the bucket. The plastic and nylon webbing and heavy duty plastic on the side is less likely to create any damage should an accident happen, which of course we're trying to avoid, right? So do what you want, buy the bucket that fits your budget best, your use case scenario, and if you become super obsessed about it, I highly suggest the Yeti bucket for all of those reasons. If you have any questions, be sure to comment below and subscribe and share with everyone you know to help me grow my channel. It's free and I really appreciate you, and I'll see you on the next video.